Let's take a look at today's learning goals. Through today's lesson, you will be able to explain the correlation between climate change and droughts, as well as the definition and cases of droughts. You will also be able to apply the methods of drought management to everyday practice. Let's start the lesson. Due to the acceleration of global warming and climate change, the frequency and intensity of disasters are increasing across the globe. Venezuela, India, and China are a few of the many cases in which flash floods have resulted in unprecedented damages, as well as the tragic losses of human life. Available water in the African region has decreased by 60% due to chronic drought. Furthermore, more than 100 countries are experiencing ongoing desertification. Extreme heat waves across Europe and in India has resulted in massive losses of human life. Another example of global warming is the melting of the polar ice caps. Over the past 100 years, the sea level has risen by 17 centimeters, which is approximately 0.3 centimeters each year. As severe droughts are occurring all over the world due to climate change, let's take a look at an overseas case. The prolonged drought from 2012 to 2015 in the state of California, U.S., was the lowest precipitation level recorded in history. The total precipitation amount was only 40% of the annual average precipitation. These images of Lake Oroville in California show the status of the lake in 2011 and then again in 2014. The differences are remarkably shocking as the lake bed is exposed in the later images. The prolonged drought affected a wide range of sectors such as the industrial, tourism, and public sectors. In total, economic damages were approximately $2.2 billion, and approximately 17,000 people lost their jobs. The drought in Australia began in 2001 and continued for approximately 8 years, until 2008. With the worst drought in approximately 100 years, certain regions recorded only 4% of the average annual rainfall. The regions affected by drought were highly dependent on dams, and the supply capacities of dams was only 16%, with the predicted supply capacities being only 6 to 10%. The third case we'll examine is Thailand, which experienced a severe drought in 2015. The drought greatly affected rice production, and as shown in the picture, infrastructure such as roads were also damaged. Between 2010 and 2011, the drought in the southwestern region of China faced a lack of drinking water for 2,500,000 people and 3 million livestock. Thus, extreme damage caused by drought is continuing in various parts of the world. Particularly in the African region, numerous people are continuing to suffer from a lack of drinking water. This is why many children catch diseases from drinking contaminated water, and children and women have to walk a long distance to obtain water. Korea is not exempt from such extreme droughts, in view of the records of the annals of the Joseon dynasty. It is written that 1 of 5 of the entire population of Korea, which equated to approximately 1 million people, had died due to severe drought. Furthermore, Korean people experienced many hardships in the post-Korean War era. Although the country has made remarkable progress in a relatively short period of time, natural disasters such as severe drought resulted in periods of famine and increased poverty. Now we're going to focus on the definition of drought. How would you define drought? Defining drought is not a simple task. There are approximately 150 definitions of drought coming from all over the world. These can largely be categorized into 4 different types. The first type is defined as meteorological drought, which refers to a lack of rainfall. Second is agricultural drought, which refers to crops damaged by insufficient soil moisture that is essential for crops, forests, and grasslands to grow. The third is hydrological drought, which refers to drought caused by a reduction in available water resources, such as river flows, reservoirs, lakes, and groundwater, which are used to supply residential and industrial consumers. The last type is socioeconomic drought. This refers to prolonged droughts that affect people through a combination of complex economic, social, and environmental factors. As mentioned, drought can be categorized into 4 different types. Generally, the process is as follows. First, high temperatures, winds, strong sunlight, and fewer clouds result in a deficit of rainfall and water evaporation increases, which is defined as a meteorological drought. When a meteorological drought is prolonged, the water content of soil is reduced and leads to the development of agricultural drought. Thereafter, the reduction of groundwater, water flowing into reservoirs, and stream flow is referred to as hydrological drought. When the 3 types of droughts occur over a long period of time, socioeconomic drought occurs and can affect people, nature, and the environment. The following images conceptualize the illogical behavior the general public has towards drought. When a drought occurs, the general public becomes aware of the situation, and when the severity of the increases, the general public begins to worry. When there is no water to use, the general public begins to panic, but when it finally rains, they become disinterested. As the images of the drought cycle highlight, it is very difficult to establish effective long-term drought measures. Many efforts and in-depth research has been conducted with the aim presenting the degree of drought severity as numerical values. A representative example of these efforts are drought indices developed. Just as there have been 150 different definitions of droughts, there are also hundreds of drought-related indices that are being developed and applied. Of the many indices, the Standard Precipitation Index, SPI, is a representative index. SPI is derived from the understanding that droughts originate from a reduction in precipitation, which in turn causes a deficit in available water in relation to water consumption. Furthermore, when there is a deficit in precipitation, water supply sources such as aquifers, snowmelt, reservoirs, streams, rivers, and lakes, as well as soil moisture content, are affected differently. SPI displays information by comparing the accumulated value of precipitation over a certain period, such as 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, with the sum of historical precipitation data over the same period of time from previous years. When comparing the accumulated value of precipitation over a certain period, such as 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, with the sum of historical precipitation data over the same period of time from previous years, SPI displays a negative, 0, or positive value when precipitation is lower, similar, or higher respectively. SPI, used to quantitatively display droughts, is the most commonly used drought index in the world and is used by the World Meteorological Organization, WMO. Next, let's take a look at another commonly used index, the Palmer Drought Severity Index, PDSI. This method recognizes droughts by analyzing readily available temperature and precipitation data to estimate relative dryness. In general, this method is commonly used in America to estimate soil moisture conditions. Furthermore, self-calibrated PDSI and other supplementary indices are being developed and applied. Let's take a look at how soil moisture is calculated. Basically, soil is divided into the upper layer and the lower layer. The amount of precipitation that is meteorologically required, CAFEC, is the value of subtracting the amount of loss from the sum of evapotranspiration, recharge, and outflow. Next, the Soil Moisture Index, SMI. Because the state of moisture is very important to soil for the growth of crops, the SMI defines droughts as the soil moisture being less than 50% of the effective amount of moisture based on a reduction of the production of crops, and the period, intensity, etc. of the drought are used to display the index. Soil moisture is calculated by considering a variety of factors that increase or decrease the soil moisture ratio. For example, precipitation and irrigation flow, indicated by blue arrows, are factors that increase the ratio, while factors such as displacement and evapotranspiration, indicated by red arrows, decrease the ratio. The algorithm for calculating SMI is as follows. As shown in the image, the amount of moisture increase by precipitation, irrigation, and the amount of moisture inflow in the transverse direction are factors that increases soil moisture conditions. Other factors in the index, such as displacement, underground displacement in the lower effective soil, evapotranspiration, and the amount of moisture outflow in the transverse direction reduces soil moisture conditions. Thus, condition of soil moisture can be calculated by finding the differences in these factors. The tools used for collecting data that are used for monitoring and predicting soil moisture as well as droughts includes general observation posts and artificial satellite sensors, which are used in combination with general observation posts. New modeling and sensor technologies are continuously being developed, which will result in more accurate and reliable agricultural droughts forecasts. Now we are going to focus on drought management. Due to the unique characteristics of watersheds and regions, governments and stakeholders need to study, develop, and apply applicable solutions to effectively manage droughts. Now, we will take a look at how various countries have responded to and managed droughts. The first case we will mention is the United States. The U.S. introduced water patrols which are responsible for monitoring the use of water. In another case in the U.S., shade balls were used to reduce evaporation in a reservoir. In the case of England, water used for yards and gardening were strictly regulated. In Australia's case, financial support was provided to residents who installed water tanks in their homes. In the case of Queensland, Australia, which experienced a severe drought, a water grid was constructed to connect and use all available water resources, such as surface water, groundwater, manufactured water sources, and water treatment plants. The purpose of the water grid is to preemptively and systematically manage droughts by connecting available water sources. This diagram provides a visual conceptualization of the water grid. Available water resources such as groundwater, rivers, dam reservoirs, and seawater desalination have been integrated through the pipeline network. One of the most obvious problems with this grid is not about whether it is technically feasible, but rather the grid requires a significant budget, and it is difficult to gain the consent of residents. As Australia experienced severe droughts, the government was able to resolve these two issues and proceeded with the development and application of the water grid. Australia's water grid is expanded for use at each stage based on the water reserve capacity of all dams, and is largely divided into supply and demand. As you can see from the image, the green portion, which ranges from 100% to 60%, represents the available water impounded in dam reservoirs. When the water reserve of dams fall to below 60%, seawater desalination plants are operated. And when the water reserve falls to below 50%, reclaimed wastewater is used. When the water reserve is critical and falls to less than 20%, additional emergency measures are required. In terms of demand management, the amount of usable water per person per day is restricted according to the total water reserve of dams to prepare for droughts. Now we will look at Korea's measures to respond to droughts. First, since impounded water in dam reservoirs are a main source for industrial and residential water supply systems, dams play a key role in the management of droughts. Accordingly, the standard water reserve required in each dam is determined based on multiple factors, including the time of year, stakeholder interests, cautions, warnings, and drought forecasting. At each of the response stages, a portion of available water resources are reduced. Through each of these responses, water is stored in a dam reservoir as a preemptive measure for when droughts are forecasted to increase in severity and, or duration. Furthermore, a deficit supply method is introduced to efficiently supply reserved water to dams. The deficit supply method is comprised of the real-time monitoring of flux in the downstream, and when there is sufficient water flow and water intake problems exist, the water is supplied downstream from the dam. When there is more than a certain level of water flow considering the conditions downstream, the supply of water from the dam is reduced to prepare for drought by additionally obtaining the amount of reserve in a dam. Furthermore, a water resource supply network was also constructed. From 2014 to 2015, Boryong Dam, located in the western region of Korea, crashed due to a drought, where a waterway connecting the large stream installed with a reservoir for irrigation was constructed to respond to droughts by connecting the stream and the dam when the drought level at Boryong Dam is above the warning stage. Recently, severe droughts frequently occurred, and to constantly and stably supply water, many seawater desalination facilities are being installed and operated. Seawater desalination has the advantage of allowing a constant, stable water supply, but there is the problem of a slight increase in the cost of water. Thus, there is a need for careful review and selective introduction. Drought management so far focused on the supply of emergency water and other post-response methods. However, future drought management will change into predicting droughts and preemptively preparing and responding droughts using a preventative-focused system. It is evaluated that preventing disasters is approximately 4 times more economically efficient than post-recovery. That is why many countries around the world are introducing and operating various policies and analysis methods to enforce drought early warnings. In the U.S., the U.S. Drought Portal provides information, such as the current status of droughts, drought evaluation, drought information in each region, and related news. For droughts in the U.S., early warnings are produced by combining and calculating various drought indices of precipitation, stream inflow, soil moisture, and groundwater. The European Drought Center analyzes and provides drought information from Europe, Africa, and all over the world as Standard Precipitation Index, SPI, Palmer Drought Severity Index, PDSI, and Soil Moisture Index, SMI. China's Climate Center also provides drought information by a Standard Precipitation Index regarding the Asian and global status of droughts, and also analyzes and provides the Relative Soil Wetting Index, which is one type of soil wetness index. Now we will take a look at the drought early warning system in Korea. Before that, we will take a look at the key information of Korea water resource management. Korea's usable water resource equates to 75 billion meters cubed per year, among which 37.2 billion meters cubed is used. Unlike countries that mainly use groundwater, Korea displays the highest use of dam water, followed by stream water and groundwater. Furthermore, the rate of water supply in Korea is 99.3%, which indicates that most regions are being supplied with water, except certain regions, such as mountainous areas, seas, and islands. Now let's take a look at the Korean drought early warning system. The countries reviewed above enforced early warning of droughts using various drought indices. However, these indices had the disadvantage of being difficult for the general public to directly understand the situation. Accordingly, Korea does not use these indices, and instead uses a system that analyzes droughts based on the situation of reserve and inflow of each water source in real time to provide a new drought early warning system. This allows the general public to easily understand the situation of droughts. As so, when information is provided, the people provided with the information can easily associate and understand the stage of drought in the region, as well as the reserve and inflow of the water source used. Korea's drought early warning system provides information by fundamentally analyzing the water sources of each region and their connection systems. For example, According to the Drought Index, when it does not rain in the Seoul region, the capital of Korea, it is determined as a drought. But all water used in Seoul is supplied from Soyanggang Dam and Chungju Dam located in upstream regions. Thus, low rain in the Seoul region does not cause drought damage. That is, the state of each water source, such as dams, streams, and groundwater, is analyzed, and the supply network is considered to deliver practical information about the situation of droughts. Thus, is a suitable method when there is a complex water supply network, and ICT technologies are developed to allow the measurement and obtainment of water source information in real time, such as Korea. For such drought early warning, the path that water moves from the water source through the intake station, the filtration plant, and reservoir to reach the user must be researched in detail. The water sources we use are largely formed of dams, streams, reservoirs, and groundwater. In Korea, the water supply system that reaches water sources, intake stations, filtration plants, and the public of 3,500 uk, myeon, and dongs all over the country is regularly researched each year, and the result is used to connect water sources and regions, thereby providing drought early warnings. Korea's drought monitoring collects real-time information produced and related to the Ministry of Environment, which performs general water management, and the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, Ministry of Interior and Safety, and the Meteorological Administration to share the information in real time through a platform called Water Management Information Networking System, WINS. This information is collected and established for each water source, which is categorized and produced every day into 4 stages: interest, caution, warning, and severe. Next, the method of forecasting droughts. To forecast droughts, there is a need to understand the weather. The Korean Meteorological Administration produces and shares weather forecasts for each week, each month, and 1, 3, and 5 months each season. Such weather forecasts are categorized into quantitative prospect of prospecting how many millimeters of rain will fall, and probabilistic prospect of prospecting whether there is more, low, or similar to the annual average. This weather forecast information is used to perform a rainfall runoff analysis over the entire country. Thereafter, the amount of water used as everyday life water, industrial water, and agricultural water along the stream that returns back to the stream is considered through a water budget analysis to estimate the amount of water to flow back to the stream, dam, and reservoir. The future situation of droughts is prospected using the determination standards of each period. The produced information must be delivered to the general public. The Korean Drought Information Portal produces and services all integrated information related to droughts. The current state of droughts and prospected information of each region are provided each week, month, and season. Furthermore, not only drought early warning information, but various information is produced and serviced to preemptively recognize and prepare for droughts. Also, drought webtoons and online virtual reality-based drought education experience services are provided for the general public to more easily experience droughts and participate in saving water. Furthermore, for rapid drought response, the Drought 119 system is also provided by the National Drought Information Portal. The Drought 911 system equips and services various emergency supplies that can be used during droughts. For example, the location and contact details of regional fire departments, factories and sprinklers, groundwater wells, dams and reservoir facilities, and the currently owned supplies to greatly help with rapid response to droughts. To efficiently respond to droughts occurring in each region, there is a need for integrated information about droughts. This is why the National Drought Information Portal, an intensive drought situation board that combines, connects, and displays drought-related information to monitor the situation of droughts in each region and preemptively responds to droughts. Climate information and information on the current status of the operating dam and reservoir, drought early warning and drought-related reports are provided through the system, and the local government uses the system to respond to droughts. Next, the evaluation of the risk of droughts. Droughts vary depending on the size and form of water sources of the region and meteorological factors, and thus, there are differences in their risks in various regions. Evaluating the risk of droughts all over the country based on the same standards is very important in obtaining maximum effect with efficient investment. For drought risk-based efficient management, Korea has prepared a basis of evaluating drought vulnerability in 2017, developed an evaluation method and prepared guidelines in 2018, and has the goal of constructing a drought vulnerability map of each area from 2019 to 2023. To evaluate droughts, the 4 elements of drought response capacity, exposure, sensitivity, and supplemental water source capacity are evaluated in each region. First, drought response capacity refers to evaluating the current capacity of responding to droughts. This is a concept of evaluating the capacity of water supply of the water source in the region. Sensitivity refers to the factor of the level of meteorological exposure to droughts. That is, the level of rain is evaluated. Sensitivity refers to the factor of how great the damage is when a drought occurs. This relates to the social and economic indices of the region. Lastly, supplemental water source capacity is the factor of evaluating the means of supplementing drought response capacity. In other words, the abundance of groundwater sources. Drought response capacity and supplemental water source capacity are factors that reduce the risk of droughts, and exposure and sensitivity are factors that increase the risk of droughts. Weighted values are used to evaluate all regions of the country using the same evaluation standards to derive the regions with the highest to lowest drought risks. This risk evaluation result finds the cause of droughts in each region, establishes an efficient response to suit each cause, and review the priority of regions that require investments. Today, many countries are suffering from intensifying droughts. However, there are still a slight deficit of systems or policies in preventing and responding to droughts through a systematic drought management system. For integrated drought management, the World Meteorological Organization and WMO have created the IDMP, the International Drought Management Program with Global Water Partnership. There are 3 important axes for successful drought management. First, monitoring and early warning. Unlike before, droughts are gradually intensifying, and if we do not prepare in advance, the damage will be beyond our imagination. We will need to use a drought index that could be easily applied, or introduce an early drought warning based on the real-time status, just like in Suwon, South Korea. Second, mitigation, preparation and response to droughts. If an organization does not predetermine the measures at each stage of droughts from the demand management policy for saving water at usual times, it becomes difficult to rapidly respond when a drought occurs. The stages of droughts need to be defined, and the role of each organization at each stage must be manualized for systematic response. The cases of drought response of Korea and various advanced countries mentioned earlier can be effectively applied. Lastly, the vulnerability of droughts and their effects must be evaluated. The risk of droughts and the level of their effects must be evaluated to determine investment priorities in order to systematically establish a drought management system. Such evaluation of drought risks can be effectively used for mid to long-term management of droughts. Thank you.